Welcome everybody to the Table Rush Talk Show. Today's Friday interview is with Kate Nowlan, entrepreneur Kate Nowlan. Kate Nowlan has been entrepreneuring her whole life and most recently has leveled up and built and sold an apparel company called Graced by Grit. She's co-authored a best-selling book and done nonprofit work. Kate is an amazing person with amazing lessons, and her current mission is to help women entrepreneurs thrive as entrepreneurs in their second half of life. She's got her new gig. It's called Face Your Grace, her step-by-step guide to help women with ideas become entrepreneurs. It's truly an amazing interview. We go deep on all sorts of business subjects, and she's got the experience to back it up. Enjoy this interview, and as always, follow, like, subscribe. What else is there? All those things. Comment 5-star. Enjoy the interview. Kate Nowlan. Welcome everybody to the Table Rush Masterclass, where we help entrepreneurs like you to grow your business to 1 million annual revenue and beyond. Good morning, Kate Nowlan. I'm so excited to have you on here. We have been probably over the last year or so, since the middle of COVID, jockeying back and forth, trying to find that time to get you on one of my podcasts or my YouTube show here. And so to have it finally happen is beautiful. And from what I understand, we have a new passion. You've created Face Your Grace, which is your step-by-step guide to help build your business. And this is for to help women with ideas become entrepreneurs. Maybe touch on real quick, just give us an overview of your vision of faceyourgrace.com. Give me the 2 to 3 minute version of what that's going to do for these women fledgling entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. First of all, I really appreciate it. And for those of you that can see us, our matching hair really is what drives us to just love each other and what inspired me to be part of this. But beyond that, I had a business, which we'll talk about before. And in doing that business, I had a lot of women reaching out about what was it that made me and my business partner have the confidence to become entrepreneurs, to start that business. So we had all these women reaching out to us during that process. And we decided that it was a great opportunity for us to really create a book that told our story about how we started a business, but more than that, shared the stories of other women that really had the value systems that we felt were so important when you have a business. And so for us, we call that the grit, the grace, and the give are like the 3 biggest pillars. But beyond that, we had a variety of women that shared their stories with us. And we published a book called Graced by Grit, the Entrepreneurial Women's Guide to Starting a Business with Power, Passion, and Purpose. And that became a bestseller because I think so many women were intrigued with the stories of other women that had done something that they could relate to, right? Maybe they were on their second phase of life and their kids were off to college and they didn't know what was next for them and they needed a little side hustle or something of that sort. Or perhaps it was somebody just starting out that was really, like what I had this idea, but I don't know how to turn it into something. I was never taught entrepreneurship. So we had all these women reaching out to us and we thought, we've done this. We've built the business plan. We've made a lot of mistakes in the process, which most entrepreneurs do, right? And it's what you do with those mistakes that's really important. And we thought we have developed sort of our own methodology to building a business that we felt was really relatable to women and something that they could digest easily. And it didn't take rocket science and it didn't take having an MBA to do this. And so we decided that we were going to build a side hustle for ourselves called Face Your Grace, where it was really an online workshop series with a coinciding workbook that really takes your idea and turns it into your business plan. And that can be anything from a side hustle to a small business. And so we had this idea, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit. And who was hit the hardest during that time were women in this country, because they had to figure out how to primarily, and that's not all women,
Of
but
course.
I don't want to say that men weren't stepping up, but women really had to make the hard decisions of, okay, I've got to figure out childcare for my children that are school age. I've got to figure out how to teach them. And they couldn't keep up with the rigor of their jobs either. And so there was millions of women fleeing the workforce. And in doing that, they were recognizing that they never wanted to have to go back. They didn't want to have to go back to the conventional way of life. And they wanted to create things for themselves that they got to dictate what that really looked like. And so we were already building this, and it was sort of serendipitous in a way, because we thought, gosh, the timing couldn't be better to really help educate women, because that was the biggest thing for the women reaching out to us was, I don't know how to do this. Like, how did you do it? How did you build a business plan? How did you figure out how to market your product or your idea? Or your service? And so that's where we built this entire online workshop series with this coinciding workbook. And we're launching it in the next week, which is super exciting and nerve-wracking as an entrepreneur. As anyone listening understands, that launch date is like the deadline of all deadlines to say, and then we threw it all out there and it's like, oh, now we really got to do it. So it's up all on all of our social medias. So that is Face Your Grace in a nutshell. We will be offering also once a month coaching that comes with the small business module that we have, but it's also something that people can tap into for $29 a month. It's super easy to join, and it really connects you with a community of other female entrepreneurs. We will have special guests on, maybe someone like you, that talks about, certain very, very topical things that women want to know as they're building their business, whether that's marketing, sales, culture, just growing revenue to a certain extent, understanding direct to consumer avenues, understanding community, et cetera. So I think I went over my time and explained it. Clearly, I'm passionate about it, but that's Face Your Grace in a nutshell. And you can see that all at faceyourgrace.com too to get a better understanding.
Yeah, fantastic. And anybody can go down below, click on faceyourgrace.com. Go do it now. You can follow along while Kate and I are talking about this. But anybody watching, I mean, it sounds like, can you imagine, like, you're literally laying out the blueprint for success for anybody who pivoted during the COVID, or perhaps a divorce, or just second half of life. Like, here's the blueprint of how you can embrace the new path. And how powerful is that? So love that. And I love the vision and fantastic. So let's go back. I think it's 10, 12 years where you're in this fire of life. You've got your own sort of tension point in your life, right? You've got two daughters, I think, at this time, or right, and maybe a marriage that's in flux. And tell me, take us back to how does Kate go from being, I think you were a stay-at-home mom, to all of a sudden you've had Graced by Grit, which you got an exit strategy. So you're still a part of it, but you got to build this business. You got an exit strategy. And then what was the other thing you just told me? Your handbag company that you've helped grow to $1 million. We've got Civil Apparel, which you're an equity partner in, and anybody can go check out civilapparel.com. I'll have that link too, CIVILE apparel.com. But like, break it down for us. You literally went from no entrepreneurial education to fire to tell us.
Yeah, it's interesting because, looking back now, right, we all look back at our lives and things shift, right, in your mindset as you go along, and you don't realize sometimes what you knew at certain points of your life. And so I say that when I go back the 10, 12 years, I was a young mom. I became a mom in college, which was a very gritty moment within itself for me, where, it was a big decision to make and to start a family really young. I was 20 years old. And I always sort of had this entrepreneurial spirit from when I was young, but I didn't know what even entrepreneur was. Like, that was like a word that was like, that's not me. That will never be me. I'm not trained to be that. And so I didn't consider myself that, but I'd always had this tendency to see holes and want to fix them. And I say that in the context of I was a former swimmer, and I was living in a town, and I was looking for a swim program for my kids, and there wasn't one. So I thought, I'm going to start one. So I did. And I was trained for triathlons, and I didn't have a great master's swim program to attend. And so I started a swim master's program. I had a small house that had to fit a lot of crap in it. And so I am super organized, and I had a lot of friends asking me to help organize their homes and their businesses. And so I started a home office organizational business called Absolutely Organized. So I had these sort of stepping stones along the way in my 20s that I didn't see as entrepreneurship, but it was building things and filling needs, right? And seeing opportunity. And so when I moved to California in 2009, I was on the brink of divorce, and I was really trying to go, okay, like, what does the rest of my life look like? I have no real career. I had been at home with my children, mostly out of the need for, the unfortunate part of childcare being so expensive. And I was so young, I did get my college degree a year later than I was supposed to, but when you start to do the numbers and you're that young, you're like, well, it doesn't even make sense for me to work with the field I'm interested in going in. And so I was always sort of like scrappy and picking up side hustles to make ends meet for our family, but I was never working full time. And so then I was on the brink of divorce, realizing I had to provide and going, what the heck am I going to do? And happened chance to fall into a great position at a nonprofit, helping run an aquatics program and building all of their fundraisers and running their office. I mean, I really actually found a job I created a job for myself within this program.
Yes.
So another entrepreneurial step, because I was like, you need someone to do this. You need someone to do that. And I can do this. And I will make sure that we're getting enough in funds so that you cover my salary, and therefore I'm covered. So again, that was another stepping stone. And I did that for a few years. And in doing that, nonprofit work is not very lucrative, for those of you that don't know that already, but I had a bunch of side hustles. So I was a big runner and triathlete at the time, and a swimmer. And so I was training triathletes and runners, and I had women's running groups, and I had a woman that hired me to help train her for a triathlon. And she said, gosh, if I looked like, and granted, I was running like 3 or 4 hours a day, so this is no longer the version of Kate that you see now, but she said, if I looked like you in athletic apparel, I'd wear it all the time. And I said, yeah, but this stuff isn't really that, I mean, it looks great on, but it doesn't really perform the way I want it to. I'm out there, doing 3-4 hours a day on the road. And so we got to talking about, is there an opportunity to create an athletic apparel brand that really fit our need? Lululemon was the number one player at the time, and we didn't feel like that was who we could identify with. We felt like that was more of the like high-end coffee shop mom that didn't necessarily like work out hard, but she just looked like she worked out a lot. And certainly the trend over the last few years of, accepting people wearing athletic apparel and leggings has just skyrocketed. So we took advantage of the opportunity at the time and saw really, truly that opportunity. And so we thought about building a business. She had a lot more confidence in it than I did, because despite my experience of building things, I said, I've never sewn a button, even on a shirt. I know nothing about apparel. And I've never really built something to the extent that we were talking about doing it. My business partner had an extensive background in business, as well as a consultancy in which she helped businesses raise their, series A, B, C, potentially into an acquisition. So she did have that background, which, helped with the confidence to do something like this. And so we spent about 5 months, and I was at a true pivot point. I had left my nonprofit job. I had taken a job in private sector, making a great amount of money, but I never saw my family. I got fired from that job because the gentleman that ran it said, you are not meant to sit behind a desk all day. And it was like, for me, it was like the work that was going to kill me for the rest of my life. And I think that anyone that has been in that position knows exactly what I'm talking about, where I'm like, this is a slow, painful death. This is not who I am, but I have to provide. And so I'm going to suck it up and do it. Well, he saved me because he fired me and he said, nope, this isn't for you. And it really opened up my eyes to like, how old was I? I was 30. I don't even know. I don't even know how old I am now because I'd like to forget it. But I was in my early 30s, I think. And it was like, okay, what am I doing with my life? I have no real like career behind me. I've done a lot of cool things, but like I don't have that stepping stone. And so we spent 5 months building a business plan, figuring out our manufacturing, figuring out our partners that we wanted to work with. How do we want to grow this? What did that really look like? And it was such an invigorating process. And then from conception to launch took us about 9 months. And from there, I went gangbusters because what we did was we cultivated a really incredible community of women that could relate to who we were and what we represented. And so the name of that company, I think, says it all. It's called Graced by Grit. And it was about how women have these really gritty moments in their life. And it's how you make it through those moments, what you do with those moments that define you and give you your grace. And so in that narrative, it just really evoked strong emotion from women that understood what that was. And so, I mean, I've got lots of fun stories about when we went out to pitch to men and all the fun things that they didn't understand about it that later they apologized for, I will tell you. But we built over 5 years an incredible community. And we ended up, as part of our plan, was selling that business to another athletic apparel brand, which we did 5 years, almost to the day, actually. And from there, I then worked for the company that bought us on the day-to-day for about 20 months. And then I went onto their board and was an advisor for about a year on their board, and found another deal that came in with that. And so I no longer am involved with that, but we do have a legacy called Graced by Grit Foundation, which is a nonprofit that was created to really carry forward the underlying narrative about women and helping women to be successful, which we provide scholarships for young women going to college for athletics and academics, understanding that the longer girls participate in sports, the greater chance they have of success because of what they've learned in athletics, teamwork, learning to lose and fail, which is a huge lesson, knowing how to pick yourself back up when that's happened, learning how to win with grace, learning how to be a team player, learn how to be a leader. So there's all these skills that you learn in that parlay into life. And that's why 94% of women today that are in the C-suite at that highest level in business have participated in athletics because of what that says. So that's the intention behind all that. So that's really been my path. And then, as I shared earlier, we wrote a book at the tail end of Graced by Grit, and then we came up with this idea for Face Your Grace. So I've had the privilege of being able to, since I left the day-to-day of the company that bought us, be a consultant for businesses where they are trying, much like you are providing insight, they are trying to get to that next level for themselves in business. And that's what I'm doing now. So I work with a bag company. I'm an equity partner for a pickleball apparel brand, which who knew that there could be pickleball apparel, but it's fastest growing sport in the United States. If you haven't tried it, you need to. And then you need to buy the clothes that we have. And everything that I've done, I can tell you is and I know we'll dive into this a little bit more with when we talk branding, but like, it's all about being authentic. Like nothing I'm doing is not who I am. It represents my life, my lifestyle, my values, what I believe in. And I think that comes across when people access me and they are like, oh, wow, this is not disingenuous. She's doing this because she truly believes in it and because she lives the lifestyle of it. And so, we can talk a lot about that part of authenticity, but I think that's, that pathway into entrepreneurship. Now I call myself an entrepreneur proudly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that I am an entrepreneur at heart. In fact, I don't even know, I've got my dad actually is in town right now. And, he's a more traditional guy, doctor and all that. And he's like, okay, well, this is really cool stuff, but like, what are you going to do for a job? And I'm like, Dad, this is my job.
I love it. It's so good. My mom was always freaking out. She was always like, when are you going to go? Same thing. When are you going to go get a real job? I mean, till she passed, she's like, when are you going to, go traditional? I'm like, well, I don't, can I ask you a few questions? I want to touch on a couple things.
Yeah.
So first off, I just want to say I was literally getting the chills and the hair on the back of my neck was standing up when you were talking about this vision of how to help young women, find success. in the scholarship and that legacy you've created with the Grace by Grit scholarship thing. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of it, but beautiful.
Yep. Grace by Grit Foundation. Yep.
Yeah, the Grace by. So thank you for sharing that. That's just so beautiful. What a powerful legacy to have that come out of all of that. I love too how you were saying your foundation for entrepreneurship was building your whole life and you didn't realize it. And I love that. I love, you're like, yeah, there were these side hustles or these out of necessity, you were creating these opportunities so you could survive and thrive. And then now to be able to look back on it and be like, oh yeah, that was full entrepreneurial endeavors. Like that's amazing. So love that. Yeah. I want to say or ask, so my question here is, you made it sound real easy. So I maybe you could just talk about some of the insecurities along the way. And I think my whole thing, I'm a process guy. I'm like, here's the steps. If you follow the steps, you can have success. So that's what I love about Face Your Grace. You're like, hey, any female entrepreneurs out here who are budding or want to get to the next level, here's the blueprint. You've done it. We know that if you follow these steps, success will follow, right? Mm-hmm. But I think in the heat of the battle, it's like, tell me maybe some of your insecurities or these learning moments, or like, you're like, what am I doing? I'm sure along the way. Always. Can you talk to some of that?
Right now, I launch my business next week and I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm a total amateur. I don't even know what I'm doing and people are going to figure it out. I mean, whatever that syndrome is called that we all claim to have nowadays.
Right.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I live that all the time where I'm like, I'm not qualified. I don't even know why they're calling me to talk about this. Right. So there's constant insecurities in entrepreneurship. And, I would say going back to starting Graced by Grit, I was probably the least aware of my power and what I could bring to the table. And in saying that, the way I behaved probably was, that motivated me, I should say, right? So it was like, I was super insecure that I wasn't capable of running a business. And so I did everything I could in my power to educate myself and to learn and to do. And in the doing is where you gain the confidence, right? You're like, oh, okay. And I agree. I'm more of like a step-by-step person. I'm all process. Like, almost to a fault. I'm like, hold on, step back. What's our process in this? Because I hate inefficiencies. Like that is like my jam. And it's been that way forever. I mean, it's like I could look at something and I'm like, that is so wrong the way you're doing that. And I can't keep my mouth shut. So I'm like, telling you why it shouldn't be done that way. So that is definitely, anyone that's worked with me knows that very well. But, insecurity wise, I didn't think I had the ability to do it. I didn't have a background in it. And so I think that's where I felt like people they're going to figure out I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And so a way that I tackled that often was to own it. I was like, hey, I haven't done this before, but I believe enough in myself and believe that I'm surrounding myself with the right people that can make this successful. And I think that's a huge part of entrepreneurship as well as leadership, is knowing what you don't know and knowing to surround yourself with people that know it. And so I would say that was one way I tackled that. I look back and there were even moments. So I can give this is a great example, actually. When it was probably like a year and a half into Graced by Grit, and I was starting to see our apparel popping up everywhere. And it was really obvious. It was that we used very bold colors and you couldn't miss the colors. So living in Southern California, I had the luxury of driving the coast to work, to my office. Yes. And I was driving the coast one morning and I looked at the beach and there was a woman wearing Graced by Grit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know who she is. And she's wearing it, which is like the ultimate as, like
hearing your song on the radio, right? It's like, wait, what?
Totally.
This I'm like,
real. My stuff. I don't know her. And she's wearing my stuff. Like, how cool is that? So I actually pulled over because I was so excited about it. And I was on the phone with my business partner at the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's somebody wearing our stuff. I got to pull over. She had a camera crew around her. So I pulled over and I'm like, hi, I noticed you're wearing Graced by Grit. She did not know I was the founder. And she said, oh yeah, gosh, I wear this all the time. And in fact, I'm doing a story right now for a stand-up paddleboard magazine about how stand-up paddleboard has changed my life. But ultimately, I'm wearing these clothes because they've changed my mindset. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she goes, well, I don't think you understand what graced by grit means. And I said, tell me, please. And she said, I have stage 4 breast cancer and I'm a mother of 4 and I'm fighting for my life. And every time I go in for my chemotherapy, I visualize the words graced by grit because that defines who I am. And it was a really special moment because for me, it was the realization that I had created something bigger that I didn't even understand. So it was, and then I shared with her, that I was the founder and you're right, I didn't know what Grace by Grit meant to her. And that really catapulted me into understanding the responsibility, that I had with the narrative surrounding Grace by Grit, that I had to stay authentic with it. And I had to make sure that the stories we shared were authentic stories about women, because that's what women were connecting with within our community. But it also sort of makes you realize that you don't realize the impact you can have on other people with something that you think is so insignificant and how significant that can be. And that was one of actually so many stories. And so when you talk about insecurity, when she said to me, oh, you don't understand what grace by grit means, let me tell you, I was sort of in my head thinking, I know what grace by grit means. And then she told me, and it was really humbling. And it was actually a moment of insecurity in a sense of I gotta not take advantage of it, but I have to grasp what she's talking about so that I don't ever sound disingenuous about what I'm doing. And so, I think being open to moments like that in entrepreneurship, and I say that not just in, her defining grace by grit and what that meant to her, but also in people being critical of what you're doing and giving you ideas. Sometimes you, as an entrepreneur, you're like, yeah, I got it. I know how to do this. And I'm sick of everyone telling me you know what you should do. I mean, I even had a whole thing where I was like, I just want to have a landing page on our website that's you know what you should do. And people can write it and then it goes into the abyss and I never actually see anything that they say. Because of course you're going to get ideas that you're like, yeah, you don't understand. Thank you though. That being said, when you build a community, you want to hear from your people and you want those people to feel like they can be part of that conversation because that's loyalty. And especially in this day and age, I mean, there's so much popping up. We're so, we're inundated with information all day long in our feeds. To stand out, it has to be authentic. And so I think those insecure moments led to really valuable values and understanding on terms of how I wanted to run a business and conduct myself within that business. So, there was lots of insecurities, by the way. I mean, shoot, I pulled up to factories and I was like, I don't really even know how to sew. And I'm trying to negotiate pricing. I mean, that seems silly. I was talk about Seinfeld moments. There was so many moments where I would get the giggles. It was one time I remember my business partner and I, we had done a funding raise and we had to get all the paperwork completed by 5:00 or else we had to pay the attorneys to redraft everything for the new date the next day. And so we were crazy trying to get this all done. I had no idea how to even read legal documents. It was I had to have a translator for every sentence about what it meant. I mean, and that was you're it looks like you're looking at foreign words on paper and you're I'm what am I doing? Giving my life away right now with this? I don't even know what I'm doing. I mean, talk about insecurity, you know what I mean? But the way I handle insecurity is leaning in. And it's what anyone I coach and anyone I work with, I'm lean into the things that make you uncomfortable, because the only way to get past them is to understand them and lean into it. And for women in particular, money is a topic they hate talking about, whether it's what they get paid, it's what things cost. I mean, even when I was selling leggings for $98, I was like, who wants to buy a $98 legging? Are they even worth it? And I'm using beautiful fabrics, but I had this insecurity that I was ripping people off. You know what I mean? So it's insecurity can be a beautiful thing to drive you forward and motivate you.
Love that.
And I really honor that. And I really live by that. And I always advise lean into the things that make you feel uncomfortable, because the only way to figure it out is to dig in.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, noted, and internalizing myself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, we all
Yeah.
do it. And we do. I mean, and it's not like, grit is a top hot word now. When we started Grace by Grit, it wasn't a
Yep.
hot word until Angela Duckworth came out with the book Grit,
Yeah.
which I had the pleasure of meeting her. She's an amazing woman and really speaks to what that means. But grit isn't about the sprint. It's like grit is a marathon. Grit is knowing how to pick yourself back up time and time again, and that each time you pick yourself back up, you're that much stronger. And so when you look at entrepreneurship, I think you have to look at it with that gritty mentality, because there's detours all day long. You wake up in the morning, you think your priority is one thing, and you get hit over the head with something else, and you got to figure out how to manage that. And so entrepreneurship is not for the not for the people that like predictability.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I think another skill set you have, and maybe you could speak to this, is you've been able to, out of the fire and building this stuff, find people to support you. So you talked about it. Hey, knowing what I don't know and surrounding myself with the right people. And so obviously, again, faceyourgrace.com, you are a resource for these people. And can you imagine anybody watching, like, access to this enthusiasm? Like, it's awesome. But when Grace by Grit's coming about, and we'll get to Face Your Grace, but I'm having so much fun talking about your history to this point.
Yeah.
So thank you for indulging me. You find this partner to work with, and then you find these right people, or they find you, or the universe is dropping them into your life. Like, tell me about tapping into that, or like, oh yeah, this is my person, this is my partner, this is my.
Yeah, and actually, we talk a lot. I talk a lot about this in our book, and also in the Face Your Grace actual, like when you sign on for one of the courses itself. Yeah. We talk about intuition a lot and trusting your gut. And women actually have the ability, not that men don't, but we have a greater ability, just nature-wise, to have a gut sense about things. And I think often women disregard that, that gut sense sometimes when, whether they're trying to convince themselves of something or others are convincing them, and so they ignore it. But that gut thing is something that I think is so incredibly important. And I say that when we talk about surrounding yourself with people, because there were certainly times that my gut said, not the right person to work with, not going to give you what you need for this. And I didn't listen to it. And then things happened there, right? Whether that was people I hired, partners I took on. I mean, we had one PR firm that was just like, from the very get-go, I'm like, these are not our people. They do not understand, even though they seem to.
Yes.
They didn't understand what we were really trying to accomplish. And, you spend a lot of money to learn that mistake. Let's put it that way. And so, what that taught me, and I think, you get to a place where you go, shit, my gut is actually should be driving my decisions. And so I encourage anyone in entrepreneurship and business, to be frank, and life, by the way, where it's like, learn how to listen to your gut, learn how to listen to your intuition. Like, literally, what are the physical feelings when your gut's telling you something? Like, learn to identify what those are, learn how to sit on those feelings, and then make a decision based on that. And, sometimes we get stuck in the getting information mode, and it's a loop. Or it's like, I want to trust you because I see so badly your potential, but you disappoint me time and time again. And I think we've all lived that, right? Where it's like, oh man, you're saying all the right things, so I'm going to give it another shot, and dang it, it's like, what's that saying? Burn me once, shame on you; burn me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
And I would say that really correlates to the gut piece and listening to that. And so when we worked with a lot of different partners, we hired a lot of different women. As time went on, we got really good at surrounding ourselves with people that got it and learning how to listen to that gut sense very early on in the relationships and conversations, as well as being able to say very early on, this isn't going to work. No, thank you. no, thank you, not interested. And learning to say no is a huge part of that too. But I would say, one of our, not mistakes, but we really had a passion for helping women, whether that was a woman starting her career or a woman reinventing herself. And so sometimes you see the potential of those people, and yet they're not quite there. And so it takes time to get them there. And the mistake when I say it was a mistake in a sense, it was, I thought we could get people faster to where we thought they could go. And unfortunately, when you're growing a business, sometimes you don't have that time to do it. And so what I learned, and what, if I could go back and rewind the clock, for certain roles, I probably would have hired people that were more experienced, even though it would have broken the bank a little, or I would have had to cut resources somewhere else. The return on that investment would have been so much greater if I had done that early on. And so, potential is a beautiful thing. And there's certainly, opportunity to support that within entrepreneurship, but learning to know what you don't know and where you need help. And that's in a partnership too, by the way. Maybe you're not growing a business that requires hiring a bunch of people or bringing on partners, but maybe it is just working with one person, right? And you want that person. And we talk a lot about this in the Face Your Grace program about, like, do you have a partner, or do you do this solo? I mean, there's a lot of benefits to having a partner in business. You divide and conquer, you have different skill sets, but there's also some negativity that can come with that, especially for people that are too much alike, where they're like, oh, we're both really good at business development and sales, but we're terrible at the ops and the finances, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, my nephew's in the background. My half-year-old that is not abiding by the podcast rules of being quiet.
I love it. There we are, being authentic.
Yeah, I've learned in this pandemic, hey, background noise is just background noise. It doesn't ruin anything. But so I would say, that was great lessons in, experience is exactly what you sometimes need. And then there are times where it's like, we had a great internship program where one summer we had 10 different interns of young women in college that, were contributing in all sorts of ways. I mean, our office was crammed. It was like, oh my gosh, if the fire, department comes, we're going to definitely get in trouble for how many people we have in this space. But we, but we had the ability at that point to have people that were managing. It wasn't like I was sitting there managing all of our interns, but what an experience for them to be part of a startup, that they have the rest of their lives to see what it took to build something and to be part of a team that's scrappy, figuring it out as they go, you know what I mean? Authentically arguing or not arguing, and being part of the joy and the rewards of that too. And so I personally love that give back part of it. But that's where I would place some of that inexperience is, when you have the time, when you want to give back, that's where you give, that's where you do that. When you need to grow a business, surround yourself with people that know more than you about the things you don't know.
Love that. Thank you so much.
Long-winded version of what you asked.
You know what? It's beautiful. Thank you. Well said. So faceyourgrace.com. So my guess is that you have been inundated by so many women and fledgling entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs that are like, Kate, you've done all this amazing stuff, and like, help us. And so hence the seeds of Face Your Grace. Is that sort of how that materialized?
Yeah, it really was. It was people that had read the book that wanted more, like, how do I build a business plan? How do I figure out if my idea is worth something? Do I have a business partner? How do I raise capital for my business? What are my different options? Am I a LLC? Am I an LLC? Am I a C corp? Am I an S corp? Am I a B corp? Like, how do I define what that is from a long-term standpoint? What it makes the most sense? For side hustles, a lot of the exercise too is like, okay, how do I fit this into my day? What does that look like? Is there an opportunity for what I'm even thinking? Because sometimes we come up with ideas. Well, somebody else has already come up with that idea and they've done exactly what you've wanted them to do. And then other times you're like, they didn't do it the way I would do it. And that's where my niche is. And I can accomplish this if I can figure out how to launch something. And so we really guide you through all that. But yeah, it stemmed from women reaching out to us and people specifically saying, hey, coach me on this, give me templates, provide resources. And I was like, this is a great opportunity. I mean, that's right. That's sort of where that idea, that light bulb idea came for Kimberly and I of there's nothing out there for, there's MBA programs, there's certification classes, there's, all sorts of things, but there's nothing for women that felt like it was for us. It's again, the same thing about the athletic apparel. Like, I want to relate to the woman that I'm learning from. Like, is there some part of her that I can see in myself? And I think that's what Kimberly and I do for a lot of women is I was a single mom, scraping by and trying to figure out, I had a baby's young. I sort of did things in an unconventional way. And it was like, well, what's next for me? And now here I am, 42, which I just remembered, and I have no kids at home. And I've got, a great foundation to now really grow into a more of a career. So I've done things sort of in the flip-floppy way, but it's definitely lent to, the parts that we're talking about where it's like, that's the right, for me, that's the right way to do it. But it also, I think, is very relatable for people. And especially for moms, when you think about the moms that have had to leave the workforce or moms that have been at home for all these years, and they have that lack of confidence of, I've been at home. What is that? What is the value in that? What experience can I actually bring to the table for a job? And they realize, oh my gosh, they did it. I can do it.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes you just need that model of that person. It's like, you can do it. And like you said, like the steps. Okay, here's your breakdown. Here's your checklist. This is all doable. You just need the plan to do it.
Yeah, I love it. So Kimberly's last name, quick, so we can...
Caccavo, Kimberly Caccavo. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So she's your partner in this?
She is. Yeah, she was my partner at Graced by Grit. And then she and I wrote the book together. And then we're partners with Face Your Grace as well. And then we're also on the board for our foundation together. So we like each other a lot. That's another beautiful part of the story is, we grew a business together, which oftentimes can be really challenging. Partnership is not an easy thing in every aspect of partnership, right? Business, personal, all those things. And it didn't come without lots, our team, I would say, when we started raising our voices would go, okay, time for us to leave the room. But we were able to be honest with each other. We were able to share how we felt and we were able to be open about it. And I think that's like the best success for partnership. It doesn't have to be pretty, but it has to be honest.
Yeah.
So we're still very well connected and we actually like each other a lot too.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And to grow and thrive and make it through the ups and downs and and have new inspiration come and to to have next steps come to fruition. So faceyourgrace.com sounds amazing, and everybody watching, right? I mean, to have a blueprint, especially for a woman who's like, where's my people, right? Where's this grittiness? Where's this tenacity? Where's this, all those things you've been talking about. So the overarching strategy for faceyourgrace.com, where everybody can click on below, obviously. Break that down for me.
So the overarching strategy is a lot what we've already talked about. It's that step-by-step guide. So it's like going through the exercises. Each sort of module, as we define them, is about a specific topic, and they're all building on each other. So you start with your idea, right? And you flush out, is the idea worth something? And then you flush out, do I bring on a business partner or do I not bring on a business partner? And you flush through exercises that allow you to understand it. And maybe you've come to this, you've created this idea together. It's actually allowing you and your partner to flush through communication style, who's going to do what, who's great at what are your strengths, what are my strengths, what are our weaknesses, and how do we work that together? Do we need somebody else to come in to help sort of fill certain gaps? And then it goes through, how do you name your business? What does that look like? And what are the different ways to name a business? And how do you figure out if your name's taken, if there's trademarks, if there's all sorts of things in that nature? Okay. To, how do you decide what kind of business you are? Like I mentioned before, are you a C Corp? Are you a LLC? Like sole proprietorship? What does that look like? To how do you brand your business? How do you create a marketing plan? And then all of that comes together to be this beautiful business plan for yourself that is truly your guide to then your business. You're going to consist. I mean, I went back to our business plan throughout the years of Graced by Grit so many times. And you're like, oh, wait, we said we were going to do this. That's where we need to go. So it's almost like that blueprint you have to follow along the way. And it's so great to have this because you can go back to it. And maybe things change at times because you recognize a customer group that you didn't think would be attracted to your business. And so you have to figure out a new way of navigating those communications. But really, from my experience and from other entrepreneurs I talk to, when you build a solid business plan, that is your roadmap to success. And that's something that you should consistently go back to. So that's really the overarching strategy.
Fantastic. So if someone goes through the process, when they come out, you're going to help them with this, obviously, but they're going to literally have their blueprint and they're going to have the proper business structure and they're going to have an idea that's you've sussed out a good idea and great. Now, next steps. And here's your blueprint that you can, bring your idea to market. And obviously, it sounds like you'll be helping them bring it to market at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we are accessible. So we will be offering once a month coaching, as I mentioned in the small business program that goes alongside of it. You have to, it's $29 a month. So if you want to just join that as a starting point too, to sort of hear some of the topics that we discuss, but you do have access to us. We've, envisioned doing private coaching as well in the future, which is what we both already do. But really, it shouldn't require too much private coaching if you follow the guide itself.
Fantastic.
And you get there. And truly, you will be ready to launch your business. I mean, it flushes through how much do you need to start this? What are your costs associated? I mean, it breaks down. Do you need insurance? Do you need so you really understand the financials too. And then the next step that we are taking that we're building right now is the enterprise course, which is for people that really want to grow that like unicorn. So it's about fundraising, because fundraising is a whole different game. And for women in particular, it's a huge challenge, as I talked about. Leaning in and asking for money, knowing how to ask for money are skills that are really hard, but with practice, you can become excellent at it. And it's also knowing what resources to go after at what point, right? So in the early stages, for example, if you're starting, let's say you have this idea to build an incredible app that you think is going to be life-changing for millions and millions of people, and you want to go to market really fast, you have to raise capital to build the technology, because oftentimes, unless you're sitting on a lot of money, people don't have the cash to really do that. So you're going out for a very early equity raise. So even understanding like, what does it mean when I go out for an equity raise early on versus what does it mean when I do it later? And I've proved that there's a little bit of value in my business already. So I have a valuation per se, meaning that people would take less equity because you have proof of concept. To all the different new alternative ways. I mean, there's crowdfunding that happens these days where you're giving equity to people that aren't accredited investors, meaning that they don't have an income, they don't have assets, I think, worth $1 million and a base pay of like $250,000 a year or something like that. So like there's all these other new ways, WeFunder, Kickstarter, and there's new ones popping up specifically for women too. I Fund Women is a great platform for women to get involved with. So that's really that next step that we're now building for on there. But those, like when you think about like the next unicorn, it takes a lot of money to build something that is going to make a lot of money.
You know what I love about this, Kate?
Yes.
Is you've got the foundation for all you women watching. I mean, how amazing is this, right? Like for $29 a month and whatever the course is, faceyourgrace.com, like they can tee you up so that you're ready when the enterprise edition comes up. They'll take they'll take that idea and unicorn. Change lives. I want to ask you, so you did this, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You didn't. Yeah.
Okay, good. Excuse me. So you basically, this blueprint worked for Grace by Grit. That's sort of what brought this blueprint about, if I heard you correct. Yeah. And then you've applied this model to this bag brand that you talked about, right?
Yeah, so I'm a fractional COO for the Sash Bag. So you can go to thesashbag.com to check that out. And so talk about incredible female entrepreneurship. The founder, Nicole McDonald, started this business about 9 years ago, and she saw an opportunity. She was sick of wearing bags, walking around with things that were uncomfortable, hurting her shoulders, digging in her purse to try to find the chapstick that took 5 minutes because it was stuck at the bottom because there was no compartment that held it. And she has a background in product design. So she built a bag called the Sash Bag, and she started schlepping to all these farmers markets and figured out, oh my gosh, wow, I'm actually onto something. And so she grew her business over 9 years. And in that process, acquired a tremendous amount of loyal customers. She primarily used like Facebook, for example. So she created Facebook groups for her community where they can join and be part of these groups of women that are Sash sisters, as we call them. But there's different levels. Some women we have in our groups own over 100 bags, which I never even knew you could own over 100 bags, but they do. They must have a special room dedicated for their bags. I don't know. That's not my jam, but I was actually hired. I came about into Nicole's life because I had been doing mentorship for a group called Ad Astra. It's a venture capital group based here in Solana Beach, California, where they focus on women entrepreneurs, women founders, and invest in those. But they also have a course that helps women to pitch, because so much implicit bias exists on both sides of the equation, investors and people looking for investment. And so it really puts them through a proprietary workshop that they've designed, Ad Astra has designed, to break that down so that their pitches are stronger, better, and more successful. Awesome. And they had me come in to help with mentorship with some of their pitches. So I was working with female entrepreneurs at different times that were practicing their pitches with me, and I would sort of break that down right for them. So in doing that, they looped back with me because Nicole went through their program to get to the next step of her business. They also invested in her. She was one of the few businesses they invested in her actual class per se. And they recognized, and she recognized, that she needed somebody at a higher level. Talk about knowing what you don't know, right? And not that I know much more than Nicole. Nicole is brilliant, and she is the mastermind behind all of it. But from an operations process perspective that you and I both, I think, are passionate about, they realized that was, a gift I could give, and so what I could bring to the table for her. And so we engaged actually initially where we built out a strategy for her for the next 3 years, a growth strategy that was setting the business up for an acquisition, which I have experience in doing. So we put that together, and in that process recognized what a great time we had working together. And so I am currently her fractional COO, now executing on the strategies that we discussed. So it's not full-time work, it's fractional, but it's a passion project that I love. And I just so believe in what she's doing. I think what she's built is exemplary to entrepreneurs in terms of the authenticity and community that I think speaks volumes in today's world where, like I said, there's so much information coming at us and it's so easy to get distracted. She has figured out how to get rid of all that noise and keep customers coming back for more. So I think there's a lot for me to learn too, that I have been learning, that I'm applying to all other parts of what I do for work and life. And I think that's another part when we talk about entrepreneurship too. It's like, yes, knowing what you don't know, but like you're always learning and you're always applying and you're always reinventing. And I think that's the beauty. You get stuck in the same rhythms and patterns, and what fun is that? I mean, that's not, for me, that is so uninspiring. I think it's about like the constant growth and that growth mindset that's so popular these days. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, entrepreneurship just stretches us, right? It that leaning in and that going where we can't think we can go, right? And the growth and the confidence and the learning and the ups and downs, right? And even to thrive through the down. even sometimes, right? It can feel like, what have I done, or what am I doing?
Totally.
And to come through that is such an amazing thing. Kate, this has been amazing. I want to be cognizant of your time. faceyourgrace.com. Go check it out, everybody. You can access Kate and Kimberly and just all the goodness and just the power that's there. I don't know if power is the right word, or opportunity, or just the process. Like, amazing. So thank you so much. faceyourgrace.com. Check it out. And
please.
What's that?
I said, please.
And did we miss anything? Did we miss anything, Kate?
I don't think so. I mean, you tell me what we missed, but I think I could talk all day long. I've had 3 cups of coffee and I'm raring to go. So if you want to keep going, I think we talked about a lot, and I'm super, super grateful to be part of this, obviously, and to share my story. But more importantly, I think the gift of entrepreneurship keeps on giving. And I think to be able to share what we learn as entrepreneurs with other entrepreneurs, especially right now in this time where there's so much change in the world, and where I see opportunity for big change for women to redefine what working looks like for them, and hopefully changing the statistics that are depressing for me in terms of how many female founders get invested in, but also, how many women have left the workforce. I really feel optimistic about what the future can hold for women and women entrepreneurs, and women in general, I should say. And I love that you've had me on here to preach about that, because oftentimes men are a little bit like, ooh, this is a topic that I'm scared to touch, because what if I say the wrong thing? And there's no wrong thing to say. It's just, let's talk about it. Let's share our stories, and let's help other people succeed, because I'm a big fan of, you don't step on other people's shoulders to get to the top. You hold their hands and get to the top together. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great way to end. And I will say, I'm so excited to continue to bump into you out in the world, and to see how your next steps blossom and grow. And I look forward to having you on here again, perhaps 6 months and a year, and we'll check in.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. I'm going to hit stop, and we'll say goodbye offline.
Great.
Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.